to another dimension, surpassing the vastness of time and space. The Grand Thoughtmaturgist is here.
Alright, mortals. Bloody good to see ya. In the last couple of videos, I've mentioned traps, and I thought it was a really good idea to have a deeper look at traps, and maybe give you some examples of how I've used them or seen them used in the past, so you can maybe use it in your games. Your choice, you're in charge now after all. Let's have a gander. Now if you're running a dungeon, it's reasonably likely that you might include traps, whether that dungeon be some ancient crypt or a futuristic pirate base. Likelihood is the people that build that crypt or base would have put in security measures to make sure nothing was nicked, and I suppose to include traps such as the old classic pit trap, or the spinning blades, the swinging axe blades, or the old laser defense system. You got to have a reason for them being there to make it realistic if that's your game. Are they there to protect some treasure or something of value, such as the bodies of great heroes? Or are they there to keep someone safe? Maybe your villain is overly paranoid and he has surrounded himself with a network of traps to keep his buttocks safe. Whatever the reason, I'd make it obvious they were there. The reason I'd make it obvious is that it's pretty risky to rely solely on a perception check or some kind of spot roll for the party to identify and be aware of the trap itself, unless you're running a very risky game. But if you're not, relying on the sneaky little bastards that are the dice might not be the best option for the longevity of your adventure. I mean, you could still include a roll, but if you've made it obvious enough, I think they'll be pretty suspect, and they might insist on having a good old search, or at least chucking something down the corridor before them to see if anything gets zapped. But there might be telltale signs, a scrap of bloodied cloth here, a severed skeletal hand, for instance, some kind of giveaway that something's coming up. There could be footprints on the floor, ending abruptly in a huge bloodstain, or perhaps there are weird shadows on the wall in the perfect shape of people in agony or screaming perhaps that's been scorched for all time in the wall. And don't be scared to make it obvious. I'm sure your players will thank you for not incinerating their characters. You've got plenty of options with traps too. You can make them harmful or hindering, such as, if you're in a sci-fi setting, maybe a security door has a gas trap that knocks out whoever's trying to break in for long enough for the police or similar jurisdiction to turn up and arrest the poor sods. When the trap fires, it sends off a little comms to the local police department, part of the security package those blighters are paid for in protecting their property. Therefore, if the trap's sprung, Muggins who tried to open it is asleep for the next D4 hours, and the rest of the party's got to drag 'em around. That's another thing they're going to have to overcome, but it's not fatal. Or a partial paralysis, maybe. Maybe a gas fills a chamber when the trap is triggered, and everyone's paralysed for a short period of time. Now, when the trap was first installed, there would have been people around to discover these paralysed people. But after all the centuries, eons, since the trap was installed, those people are long left. And now they're just stuck there for 4 hours, their torches burning out until they regain their unparalysed state. Therefore, introducing the problem, relighting their torches, which might not be a problem if they've packed a flint and steel. Maybe you got a caster in the group who can whack on a bit of the old cantrip. Nice. But it goes as a forewarning that there will be more traps, potentially, and they might be on the lookout for it then. So when you get to the nasty business, they're less surprised. Also, traps don't actually have to be traps. I mean, they could be set up to go off when something's triggered, but maybe it's an environmental hazard more than a trap. If your party's exploring a derelict spaceship, maybe there's parts of the corridors where the hull has breached and there's no oxygen inside, so therefore they have to wear their suits. And would you believe it, the breach is big enough to create a load of shrapnel and sharp bits, so they got to be extra careful navigating said corridor lest they tear their space suits and maybe get a cheeky little breach in that, which will only give them a limited amount of time to get to the other side, perhaps. Or will just mean that their oxygen will deplete faster, and if the said spaceship is entirely void of oxygen, that creates a little bit of a problem. Maybe you'll have a corridor that ends in a cave, but the cave's got water in it, and below the water level, your party can see a tunnel that they can swim through. Unfortunately for them, there's horrible little fish things in there that want to bite them. Or maybe there's sharp rocks. Maybe that tunnel weren't flooded once, and there's sharp stalactites and stalagmites ready to scratch and maim them as they make their way through the tunnel, if they're brave enough to swim. Perhaps some electrical piping has fallen through the roof, and it's sparking away, and your players have got to be careful to avoid it unless their characters take some sort of electrocution damage. In a way, these environmental hazards are kind of like traps, but not specifically traps. And finally, when it comes to traps, if you've got critters sharing that dungeon with those traps, and if they're wandering around, how do they get past the traps without springing them? If you're after a realistic experience for your party, that's worth bearing in mind. Also, it's worth a little bit of time thinking about how traps operate. What's powering them? What's triggering them? How'd you get around the system? Is there a panel in the wall that you can open up? But ultimately, you ain't got to design traps from scratch. I'd leave it vague and don't worry too much. Someone's bound to ask the question how it works, but they're only being a clever There's always one, and it's best to laugh it off. Come up with some vague explanation. Leave it at that. Don't worry too much. So anyway, that's my views on traps. What do you reckon? Feel free to add to this video by chucking a comment below with extra suggestions. You'll be helping this community grow. And 2 heads are better than one. Just ask my mate Grorg. He's got 2, but as a community, we've got fucking loads of them. Incidentally, next week's video will be in response to the comments on one of my other videos. We'll have a peek at what first-time players can expect, so make sure you check that one out. Anyway, be good. If you can't be good, be clever, and I'll see you later.